Imagine discovering the food you've been eating, the meals you thought were safe, were actually a ticking time bomb, served up by a man who cared more about a dollar than human lives. This isn't just a story about a bad boss. It's about a manager so utterly devoid of ethics, so obsessed with cutting corners, that he risked a public health crisis for a few extra bucks. Get ready, because I'm about to tell you the unbelievable saga of Silas Thorne, the man who nearly put me, my coworkers, and countless innocent customers in grave danger, and how my quest for justice became a chilling dish best served cold. My journey into the belly of the beast began in early March, 2 years ago. The economy was still feeling shaky, and I was fresh out of a soul-crushing job, desperate for a clean slate. When Fresh Plate Delivers, a trendy meal kit service, offered me a position in their fulfillment center, it felt like a lifeline. The concept was simple: fresh, healthy meals, prepped and packaged, delivered right to your door. I pictured gleaming stainless steel kitchens, buzzing with efficiency, a place where I could make a real impact. The first few days, the energy was almost infectious. We were a small, tight-knit team, or so it seemed, all focused on getting those beautifully arranged plates out on time. But beneath that shiny surface, something was already festering, a quiet rot that started at the very top with our CEO, Silas Thorne. He was the kind of boss who wore expensive suits but had a perpetually rumpled collar, a man whose smile never quite reached his eyes. And I was about to learn that his obsession with efficiency was a thinly veiled excuse for outright negligence, setting the stage for a high-stakes conflict that would soon endanger us all. The cracks in Fresh Plate's pristine facade started showing within my first week. Silas Thorne, a man who moved with a kind of restless energy, always had an eye on the bottom line. He'd pace the production floor, his eyes darting, not at the quality of the ingredients, but at the clock, at the speed of our hands. He'd bark about optimizing workflows and cost reduction strategies, buzzwords that sounded impressive on paper, but translated into something far grittier in practice. Our kitchen, which should have been a beacon of cleanliness, often felt like a constant struggle against grime. I noticed it first with the cleaning supplies. They seemed to run out faster than they were replenished, and the deep clean schedule felt more like a suggestion than a mandatory ritual. "We're a lean operation, Alex," he'd explain, with a dismissive wave of his hand, once when I asked about getting more industrial-grade sanitizers. "Every penny counts. Use what you have. Be resourceful." Resourceful, I soon learned, meant stretching a single bottle of disinfectant across too many surfaces, wiping down cutting boards with cloths that were past their prime. My stomach would tighten slightly each time I saw it, a faint metallic odor sometimes clinging to the air. Not quite sour, but definitely not fresh. I told myself it was just new job jitters, that I was overthinking things, but a tiny voice in the back of my mind whispered that something wasn't quite right. This problem only deepened when it came to the actual food. Our walk-in refrigerators, meant to be kept at frigid, precise temperatures, had a habit of acting up. The older cooling unit, specifically, would frequently whine and rumble, occasionally kicking off for minutes at a time. I raised the issue to Maria, a veteran in the kitchen, her face etched with years of experience. She just rolled her eyes, a cynical smile playing on her lips. "Silas knows," she said, her voice raspy from years of shouting over industrial mixers. "He's been getting quotes for a new one for months. Said it's too expensive to replace right now." My heart sank a little. How could he know about a faulty refrigeration unit, a cornerstone of food safety, and simply delay its repair? That's when I truly started to understand the depth of his penny-pinching obsession. We were preparing raw meat and delicate produce in an environment where basic safety protocols were being sacrificed at the altar of profit. It wasn't just corners being cut, it felt like entire sections of the square were being rounded off until it was almost a circle. I felt a chill, not from the faulty fridge, but from the dawning realization of what kind of boss I was really working for. This wasn't just a bad manager. This was a man playing fast and loose with public health, and I was now a reluctant participant in his dangerous game. But that was just the beginning of the nightmare. The first truly alarming incident, the one that truly made my blood run cold, happened during a particularly sweltering week in late April. The ancient freezer unit, the one Maria had warned me about, finally gave up the ghost. It wheezed its last gasp one Tuesday night, leaving us with a critical problem. Hundreds of pounds of frozen poultry, fish, and vegetables beginning to thaw. The smell of melting ice mingled with a subtle, sweet decay that made my stomach churn. I immediately alerted Silas. He arrived, not with a sense of urgency, but with a scowl, sniffing the air as if I had personally caused the malfunction. "This is unacceptable, Alex," he snapped, his voice tight. "Do you know how much this will cost me to replace? We just had it fixed last month." Fixed, I later learned, meant a quick patch by a handyman, not a certified technician. Instead of arranging for immediate disposal and a proper replacement, Silas made a decision that still haunts me. He ordered us to move all the thawing produce and meat into the other, smaller walk-in freezer, the one already packed to the brim. "Double stack it. We can't waste this," he insisted, his eyes gleaming with a desperate greed. "Just turn the temperature down on the good one as low as it goes." We crammed everything in, a chaotic mess of half-frozen, half-thawed ingredients, completely compromising the cold chain. I felt a knot of dread twist in my gut as I handled packages of chicken that felt suspiciously soft, their labels damp. Leo, a younger coworker who usually maintained a cheerful facade, looked pale. "Boss, this isn't right," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. Silas overheard him, his eyes narrowing to slits. "Leo, are you questioning my judgment? Get back to work. We have orders to fulfill. And remember, loyalty is everything here." The veiled threat hung in the air, thick and heavy. We knew what it meant. Question Silas, and you'd be out the door, replaced by one of the dozens of desperate applicants still sending in resumes. I swallowed my ethical objections, my financial insecurity weighing heavily on my shoulders, a bitter taste in my mouth far worse than any rotten food. My heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs, as I thought of my rent, my bills. I simply couldn't afford to lose this job, not yet. So I packed the questionable chicken, my hands trembling slightly, hoping against hope that some miracle would make it all okay. But the miracle never came. The freezer fiasco was just the first domino. Next came the staffing cuts, a brutal blow that left us gasping for air. Silas, in his relentless pursuit of efficiency, decided to slash the evening shift. "Overtime is a luxury we cannot afford, people," he declared in a terse email. "We need to be smarter, work harder, not longer." This meant the remaining daytime crew, already pushed to their limits, now had to shoulder the workload of an entire absent shift. The kitchen, once a place of focused activity, became a pressure cooker. We were running around like headless chickens, trying to prep, package, and label hundreds of meals in impossibly short windows. My shoulders ached, my feet throbbed, and my mind felt like a fuzzy static. Mistakes became inevitable. A dish would be missing a key ingredient, or a label would be slapped on crooked. Silas, of course, blamed us. "These errors are costing us money, team," he'd bellow during our morning huddles, completely ignoring the fact that he was the one who'd removed half the team. His logic was a twisted pretzel, blaming the symptom while ignoring the disease he himself had caused. One particularly grueling Tuesday, just before lunch, a customer complaint landed on Silas's desk. It wasn't about the food tasting bad, not yet. It was about a missing side dish, a simple potato salad. Silas stormed onto the floor, the complaint email clutched in his hand like a weapon. "Who was on the Mediterranean station yesterday?" he demanded, his voice dangerously low. My heart sank. That was me. "Alex, this is costing us a refund, a potential lost customer. Focus, we're not running a charity here." He pointed a finger at me, his face inches from mine, and I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. I tried to explain the impossible workload, the rush, but he cut me off. "Excuses, excuses. If you can't handle the pressure, I can find someone who can. There are plenty of people out there who want to work." His words were a punch to the gut, a stark reminder of my precarious position. The exhaustion was a heavy cloak wrapping around me, stifling any desire to fight back. I just nodded, feeling deflated, defeated. The subtle humor I sometimes found in Thorne's absurd micromanagement, like his clipboard obsession, was gone now. This wasn't comical anymore. It was soul-crushing. The constant threat of being fired hung over us like a guillotine, making us all complicit in his increasingly dangerous shortcuts. The secret ingredient swap was a new low, even for Silas. It happened around mid-May. One morning, a new shipment of chicken arrived, replacing our usual supplier. The moment I opened the first box, a wave of revulsion hit me. The chicken looked off. It was paler, limper, with an unnatural sheen to it. The usual plump, healthy fillets were replaced by smaller, stringier pieces that looked bruised and tired. What happened to
Her face was grim, her voice tight with thinly veiled anger. "I understand, ma'am," she said softly. "Yes, I'm so sorry to hear that. I will pass your concerns directly to management." She hung up, her shoulders slumped. "Another one," she muttered to me, running a hand through her graying hair. "Family of 4, all violently ill. Said they got the chicken dish from last week." My heart pounded, remembering the pale, stringy chicken from the secret ingredient swap. "They think it was salmonella," she added, her voice barely a whisper. "They've gone to the doctor." A cold dread washed over me, heavier than any I'd felt before. This wasn't just a hypothetical anymore. People were getting seriously sick. The casual disregard for human life that Silas exhibited was finally bearing its bitter fruit. The news, usually just background noise, started subtly shifting its focus. Local reports mentioned a vague increase in foodborne illnesses, a spike in certain areas. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash, knowing exactly who was driving, and knowing, with absolute certainty, that it was about to hit. I felt a surge of fear, but also a growing resolve. Silas had gone too far. Someone had to stop him. Then came the news report that shattered any remaining illusion of normalcy. It was a Tuesday morning, the air in the kitchen already heavy with a familiar, stale scent. The radio, usually tuned to pop music, suddenly switched to an urgent news bulletin. A Salmonella outbreak had sickened over a dozen people across the city, traced back to home delivery meals from a specific company. My blood ran cold, and the name that followed punched the air right out of my lungs. Fresh Plate Delivers. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum against my chest. All activity in the kitchen ceased. Leo dropped a box of kale, its contents scattering across the floor. Maria gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the tinny voice of the news anchor. Silas Thorne burst into the kitchen moments later, his face a mask of panicked fury. He wasn't even attempting his usual forced smile. His eyes were wide, darting around as if searching for an escape route. "Turn that off!" he shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the radio. "Everyone, get back to work! This is a smear campaign, a lie!" But the words had already sunk in. The dam had broken. Panic, a tangible, suffocating cloud, descended upon the team. Maria started weeping softly, her shoulders shaking. Leo, his face pale, looked like he might throw up again. Silas, now completely unhinged, began barking orders. "Alex, go through the inventory logs from last week. Find anything that looks out of place. Maria, delete all customer complaints from the last month. Leo, start pulling production schedules. We need to make it look like we followed every protocol." He was trying to cover his tracks, to erase the digital footprints of his negligence. He was practically vibrating with desperate energy, tearing through files, mumbling to himself. His eyes fell on me, standing frozen near my station. "Alex, why are you just standing there?" he roared, his voice cracking. "You've always been too nosy, too many questions. I bet you've been talking, haven't you, whispering doubts?" He started striding towards me, his face contorted into a monstrous mask of accusation and fear.
I knew you were trouble. You're trying to ruin me. My mind raced. This was it, the moment I had dreaded, yet also prepared for. Over the past few weeks, a small voice inside me had urged me to document everything. I had kept a discreet journal, jotting down dates of freezer malfunctions, the secret ingredient swap, Leo's forced return to work. I had even snapped a few blurry photos in that back pantry, just in case. My hands, hidden behind my back, instinctively went to my pocket, feeling the reassuring bulk of my phone. I haven't said anything, Silas, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, though my knees felt like jelly. But you know what you did. You cut corners. You ignored health warnings. You made us work with sick staff and rotten food. People are sick because of your choices. His face drained of color. How dare you? This is insubordination. You're fired. Get out! Get out now! He lunged forward, trying to grab my arm, perhaps to confiscate my phone, to search my bag. But I was ready. I sidestepped him, pulling out my phone. It's too late, Silas, I said, my voice gaining strength. As if on cue, a loud, insistent knocking echoed from the front door of the fulfillment center. Silas froze, his eyes wide with terror. Through the large front window, we could see the unmistakable uniforms of city health inspectors, flanked by a local news crew, cameras flashing. They held official-looking clipboards and wore grim expressions. One of them held up a warrant. Fresh plate delivers? We're here for an inspection regarding a public health emergency. Silas let out a strangled cry, a pathetic sound of defeat. He looked around wildly, like a cornered animal, his eyes darting from the health inspectors to the furious faces of his employees. Maria, her tears still flowing, stepped forward, her voice hoarse but firm. He knew, she choked out, pointing a trembling finger at Silas. He knew about the freezer. He made us use bad meat. Leo, emboldened, added, and he made me work sick. I had salmonella, I'm sure of it. The camera flashes intensified, capturing every damning word. Silas, defeated, sank into a nearby chair, burying his face in his hands. The game was up. My heart was still pounding, but it was no longer with fear. It was with a strange, exhilarating mix of relief and triumph. My revenge was served not with a flourish, but with cold, hard facts and the sweet taste of justice. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Fresh Plate Delivers was immediately shut down. Health officials found a shocking array of violations, from unsanitary conditions to improperly stored food, all meticulously documented. The local news had a field day, with the story of the manager who shipped sick meals becoming a headline sensation. Silas Thorne, once the slick CEO, was arrested and charged with multiple offenses, including reckless endangerment and food safety violations. He faced fines, legal battles, and the complete destruction of his reputation. His empire, built on lies and cheap shortcuts, crumbled in a single day. The company, as expected, never reopened its doors. For us, the employees, the immediate future was uncertain. We were out of jobs, but there was an undeniable sense of camaraderie and relief. Maria found work with a reputable catering company, her experience finally appreciated. Leo, after a full recovery, went back to school, inspired to pursue a career in food safety, vowing to prevent anyone from enduring what he had. As for me, the experience changed me profoundly. It hammered home the brutal truth that some bosses will prioritize profit over people, no matter the cost. But it also taught me the immense power of speaking up, of refusing to be a silent accomplice to injustice. My journal, my photos, my testimony, they all played a small but crucial part in bringing Silas down. It wasn't easy. There were days when the fear of losing everything was overwhelming, when the thought of confronting such a toxic individual made me physically ill. But looking back, I know I made the right choice. My mental health, my integrity, and the safety of countless strangers were worth more than any paycheck Silas Thorne could offer.